Alrighty, it's 6:05. I appreciate everyone joining the Buckingham Road Traffic Calming Study Area kickoff meeting. My name is Valerie Holmes. I'm the Assistant City Engineer for Traffic, and I welcome you to tonight's meeting. We'll go ahead and get started. Your screen should look something similar to this. Again, I'm Valerie Holmes. I'm the host of the meeting. Down here in the lower corner, you'll see a couple of buttons for participants and Q&A. You'll be allowed to ask questions, either unmute yourself to ask questions, or you can type them in the Q&A box in the bottom. If you'd like to speak and with a question, if you wouldn't mind, please clicking the raise your hand button, and I will call on you as I see that you're wanting to ask a question. To unmute yourself, the unmute button is at the bottom there. Just click. I ask that you stay muted unless you wish to speak, just to keep the presentation orderly and so everyone can have a chance to talk. To mute yourself, you just click the mute button again. So we'll go ahead and get started. This is the study area for Buckingham Road. As you can see, these are the roads that are included in the study area: Don, Pimlico, Jamaica, and Buckingham. So basically, how did we get here? How did we end up at this point in the process? Well, it started with somebody calling our office requesting speed humps to be installed in their neighborhood. We sent them an application, and once we received that back, we then sent a petition, and we have gathered the signatures required to show an interest in the traffic calming program, and it led to this kickoff meeting being scheduled. Continuing on after tonight, the data collection will be the next step at the conclusion of the meeting. At the end of this meeting, we will ask volunteers within the neighborhood to sign up for the study team. We'd like to see kind of a cross-section of people on different roads within the study area. We ask that not everyone is on the same street to represent the study area as a whole. It will be up to the study team to come up with a plan for your neighborhood. Since y'all live in the area, then y'all are best suited to know what the issues are and how you would best like to handle the mitigation, whether it's speed humps or islands, whatever plan you come up with. Once that plan is finalized by the study team, I will review it from an engineering perspective to make sure that what you're requesting to do can be done. We look at locations of driveways, proximity to manholes, that sort of thing. And it's an iterative process. We go back and forth until we have, a plan that everyone is content with. And then we will then send out ballots and schedule the plan for a vote. Each item is listed individually and voted on individually. And as long as we get a 70% positive or a yes vote on each item, then that particular item will be scheduled for installation. So the data collection process, these are the types of data that we collect. We put out counters that collect the average speed of the vehicles in the neighborhood. It's also the 85th percentile speed, which is basically, 1 in 7 people are going faster than that speed. It's a measure that we use to determine what people feel most comfortable driving on a particular road. And we also collect average daily volume of the number of cars that are going through the neighborhood. We generally collect data on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and we do it during the school year. So since how we're in July right now, I won't be able to schedule the data collection until after the school year starts. This allows us to collect representative data, summertime, less cars on the road. So it's not as accurate if we do it during the summer months. So unfortunately, the traffic calming processes that happen during the summer, they have to wait until after the school year starts before we can collect the data. Again, the study team made up of volunteers from the neighborhood develops the plan for your neighborhood. Again, engineering oversight is my where I come in, and like I said, I take a look at the plan to make sure it can be done from that perspective. The streets that are eligible are ones that carry more than 300 vehicles per day and less than 2,500 vehicles per day. We feel if it's less than 300 vehicles per day, then the people that are using the streets are the ones that live there. And, there is a expectation of self-policing by the neighbors, that live in the area that, you're not going to be contributing to the speeding and cut through issues. So we feel like anything more than 300 vehicles, it's more than just the neighbors that are using those streets. More than 2,500 vehicles per day is just too much volume that the road is carrying to really warrant putting traffic calming devices on the street. So that's where we set our thresholds, is between 300 and 2,500 vehicles per day. What goes into the plan? Generally, the most popular devices are either speed humps or landscaped islands. You can see examples of each of those in the pictures to the right. We do have other devices that are available if you'd like to consider those, and those are listed here. Each column gives you the level of approval that is required in order to have that particular device proceed through the process. As you can see, speed humps, the islands, those sorts of things only require a neighborhood vote to install. Anything above that requires either an engineering or council approval. Here's some things to keep in mind. We have spacing requirements that we have to meet when it comes to placing our speed humps, generally 400 to 450 feet apart. Another thing to keep in mind that people sometimes don't necessarily consider is that each speed hump will add about 8 seconds of response time for emergency vehicles. It does slow down fire truck and ambulance response, so it's just something to keep in mind when you're putting together your plan. Another thing to keep in mind is that we have to install signs with the speed humps, and try as we might, we do try to put humps and signs on the property lines. So it's not right in front of somebody's house, but sometimes the older neighborhoods have driveways that are spaced very closely together, and we try to avoid, putting these devices right in front of somebody's house, but sometimes it's unavoidable. And, a lot of times people don't like the signs in front of their houses, but we have to install it with that just to give people warning. It's a required warning device. So communication is key. We ask that the study team communicates with the neighbors directly. Just let them know what they're thinking. If you find that you want to put a speed hump in front of somebody's home, I urge you to talk with that homeowner, make sure they're okay with it. We've had situations in the past where people just do not want anything in front of their home. And so communication is key. It's good neighbor relations, and we just ask that you please reach out and communicate your plans, to your neighbors. There is a device called a speed cushion. That's something that doesn't necessarily slow down response vehicles. It provides wheel paths in the roadway. So emergency vehicles don't have to slow down to navigate them, but it also doesn't stop your FedEx and your UPS trucks, which sometimes are the worst offenders. So it's just something else to keep in mind if you choose to have speed cushions as your traffic control device. So again, how is the plan voted on? Again, we list them individually. Each device that gets a 70% yes vote based on the votes received will pass and will be scheduled for installation. It's not a percentage of people that live in the neighborhood. It's whatever we receive is how we count the votes. And anyone who is over the age of 18 or has a valid driver's license gets to vote. We also allow, if there's rental property in the area, renters are allowed to vote, and the property owners as well, if if they want to be a part of that, then they are welcome to as well. So when will the devices be installed? It's, you know, it's handled by our streets crews. They do have a significant number of speed humps to install at this time. You know, schedule could be 6 months down the road before they're actually able to get to it. Or we also have some budget constraints because the rubberized humps are pretty expensive. And so we do have a limited amount of money that we can devote to the effort every year. However, if the device is voted in, it will get installed at some point. So just because, you know, if we don't have the funding in a particular year, it does not mean that your humps will not get installed. It's just, it may take a little bit longer. And it generally takes 1 to 2 days per speed hump to install. It is a very labor intensive process, but you know, the crews are really good about getting it knocked out fairly quickly. And that is the presentation. It's very brief. So if you have any questions, this is the website for Buckingham Road. You'll notice I know there's a little underscore between Buckingham and Road. It's not a space. So if you're having trouble finding the website, that's probably why. So if you just put in the underscore, you'll find the website. And that is my contact information, my email and phone number. Please feel free to reach out to me directly if you have any questions, and we will do our best to assist you through this process. So does anyone at the time have any questions? Looks like you may not be able to unmute yourselves. If you have a question, if you could raise your hand, and I will be happy to unmute you. Let's see. All right, I'm having issues. Okay. Mr. Lands, can you try to unmute yourself now? Looks like let's see. Something is.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, sorry, no problem.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, so first off, thanks for explaining the process.
Sure.
That you had one slide that had a list of the some of the different options for measures. I didn't see like a speed limit reduction or potentially stop signs. Are those possibilities or not?
No, always stops are not a traffic calming device, and I have an actual slide to show you that. These are some of the reasons why we do not consider stop signs as part of traffic calming. There are federal requirements for the installation of stop signs. You know, we get lots of requests for always stops. The federal government requires 300 vehicles per hour in an 8-hour day, accompanied by 200 vehicles in those same hours on the side streets. So really what it's saying is always stops are the last step that you take before you install a traffic signal. So oftentimes these residential streets simply do not have the volume required to meet an always stop warrant. And as you can see, you know, if you install an unwarranted stop sign, people are going to disregard it. They will run it if they don't see anybody else at the intersection. And then, you know, I get complaints that people run the stop signs. So that's why we don't consider stop signs as a part of traffic calming. Speed limit reductions, if there is a state law that says a street that has speed humps installed on it must be signed at 25 miles an hour. So any street that you would install speed humps on, we would go out and as part of that, switch out the speed limit to be 25. There's a question if the presentation will be available online. It will be. That website that I gave you here, this, there will become a YouTube video that will include all of the slides. So yes, that it will be part of, the website for you to view anytime you need to. And if you have neighbors who couldn't make it tonight, just direct them to this and we'll have it posted. Let's see. Okay. I have a hand raised from O'Neill. I'm trying to unmute you. All right, you have the floor.
Question was it was about stop signs and looking at that as an option. So I think Ben covered it. So thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Let's see. All right, Ms. Schumann, are you able to? Okay.
Hello?
I can hear you. You have a
Okay.
question?
Yes. So with the speed humps and the islands, especially I'm thinking about the islands in our neighborhood, because it's a wider street, but then there's parking. When have you seen that to be more effective than the speed humps?
Truthfully, islands are kind of a challenge. There's several things to consider with islands. Depending on how wide the road is, we generally, in order to have a calming effect on traffic, the islands can vary in width. Like I said, depending on the width of the road. We try to shoot for 11-foot lanes on either side of an island. So again, not knowing how wide the roads are, you could end up with a very narrow island or a very wide island. What it does is when you put in an island, it does not allow on-street parking in the immediate vicinity of the island. And a lot of people are very sensitive about losing their on-street parking. So in that case, if islands were part of the plan, we do have a permission form that has to be signed by the adjacent homeowners that's going to be affected, that basically says, yes, I don't mind having on-street or the islands on my street, knowing that I'm going to lose my on-street parking because of it. We had a situation where the island was voted in, and one homeowner, regardless, he knew he was getting islands in front of his house, and he was fine with it until the day we marked it, and then he changed his mind. So we had to institute that extra step to make sure that the people who are getting an island in front of their house are truly okay with it. And so it just, it provides an aesthetic for the neighborhood as far as, it is a landscaped island. It's a beautification effort. It kind of slows people down in that it's a sense of place. But as far as aggressive speed control, you are going to find that speed humps are truly what will slow vehicles down, because it's a physical object in the road that they have to navigate over. So I hope that answers your question.
It did. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Mr. Lanz, I think you had your hand up again.
Yeah, sorry. Can you explain also real quick the cushion, kind of what the difference? I was trying to understand how, I think you said emergency vehicles and
Yes.
And like delivery trucks could kind of bypass that. How does that work? Is it
Okay,
just
so sure.
placing-
So if you recall, for a long time, and I can't remember if they're still there or not, there were speed cushions in Cleveland Park. Basically what a speed hump does, it's a rubber hump that spans the entire width of the roadway. There are no spaces, there are no gaps in between the rubber to allow for wheels to just pass over unimpeded. Whereas a speed cushion does, it has maybe a 1.5 foot gap in the rubber that just allows the emergency vehicles to, they don't have to actually go over the hump. They just, you know, their wheels stay on the ground and they don't have to slow down as a result. So it's really, and I think for future presentations, I'll add an example of a cushion. But if you've been to Cleveland Park, they've had speed cushions installed, and the spacing is supposed to be such that the emergency vehicles can pass unimpeded, but it's wide enough to where a car's wheelbase has to go over at least one portion of the speed hump, or the speed cushion, excuse me.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Is there any way to, excuse me, I'm thinking about, there's a fire department close that does sometimes use the street. So I guess, I think I remember reading and heard you say something about needing their approval on whatever we kind of come up with. But is there any way to get, like, I don't know if hybrid's the right word, but I mean, for kids riding their bikes and people pushing strollers, like, is there any way to get some kind of cutout without it necessarily being vehicle tire space?
We do for the speed humps in concert with our city's mobility coordinator. We do try to leave 18 inches off of the edge of pavement to allow for, say, bicycles to go around the side. It leaves enough space to where they don't have to go over the speed hump, but it's not wide enough that the car can avoid it.
Got it.
So we do accommodate bicyclists in that way, and I think, you know, that's a pretty wide gap on the edge of pavement, and it's something that we can certainly look at. But again, you don't want to make it so narrow that it gives the car an opportunity to go around to avoid it by driving around it.
Yeah, I understand. And then one more question. You were talking about stop signs, and it sounded like that was kind of a complicated requirements and so forth. And I don't know, it could potentially still be an issue, and, or excuse me, I guess some of these areas could potentially qualify, but there was a stop sign put on the on Wembley at the intersection of Carolina within the last year, which is just right outside of this area. And was wondering how that might have come to be. Was that kind of through a different channel than this traffic calming process?
It is always stop requests are handled outside of the traffic calming process. You can request it from my office. My understanding is, if memory serves, the one at Carolina and Wembley, that was put in to address a sight distance issue. So that is an exception to the volume warrant that the federal government requires. If there is a sight distance issue to where a particular approach can't see safely around the entire intersection, then that is an exception to the rule. So if you have a specific location, you can certainly, you know, make a request and we'll go out and take a look at it. And it is handled out of my office.
Okay.
But again, that is an exception to the rule, is sight distance requirements.
Yeah, then that might be there are a couple things, at least at Pimlico and Don, that have corner with, anyway, and Carolina as well, that may have that issue. So maybe that's something we investigate during this.
Okay. Righty. Let's see. Does anyone else have questions? All right. Well, it doesn't look like I have any other questions. So again, my contact information, the public input website has lots of additional information specific to this neighborhood and the traffic calming process in general. So I encourage you to go check it out if you haven't already. And with that, I thank y'all again for attending tonight, and I hope you have a really great evening.